Welcome to the PodQast, where we dive deep into the world of best-selling books. Each week, we explore the latest hits and timeless favorites that are captivating readers everywhere. Join us as we unpack the stories, themes, and characters that make these books unput-downable. Whether you're looking for your next great read or curious about what everyone's talking about, you're in the right place. So grab your coffee, settle in. This is the PodQast, powered by OnCue New Media.
Hey there. Ready to decode the language of love?
You've brought us some intriguing snippets from Gary Chapman's The 5 Love Languages.
Clearly on a mission to build stronger relationships, and who isn't?
Right.
We'll be your guides as we unpack Chapman's core concepts.
Bringing those love languages to life with stories straight from the book.
So good.
By the end of this deep dive, you might just have a better grasp on your own WN love language.
And those are your loved ones.
It's like having a cheat sheet for deeper connections.
Exactly. Now, Chapman kicks things off by debunking what he calls the in-love myth.
You know, that initial rush of butterflies and endless texting?
Oh, yeah.
He describes it as almost an obsessive state where even pepperoni pizza tastes better because you're sharing it with them.
Relatable much.
Absolutely. And he's not saying those intense feelings aren't real.
But he does point out that for most people, that head over heels phase has an expiration date.
About 2 years, to be precise.
2 years. That's oddly specific.
So what happens after the honeymoon phase fades?
Is that it for romance? Asking for a friend, obviously?
Not at all. This is where Chapman gets really interesting.
He argues that the end of that initial euphoria isn't a failure, but a natural transition.
It's like those noise-canceling headphones switching off reality returns, complete with quirks and imperfections.
But here's the key. Lasting love is possible.
Okay.
It just requires understanding how to speak your partner's unique language of love.
Okay, I'm seeing why this book's a classic.
So it's not just about saying, I love you.
It's about saying it in a way that actually resonates with your partner.
Like, I might as well be speaking Klingon if my lovey-dovey gestures aren't even on their radar.
Precisely. We each have a primary love language.
A way of receiving love that speaks to us on the deepest level.
Chapman outlines 5 of them.
Words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch.
Okay, those are pretty distinct.
So let's say my love language is acts of service.
Does that mean a bouquet of roses is basically meaningless to me?
Should I be demanding my partner do the dishes instead?
Not necessarily. It's about recognizing which language makes you feel most loved.
But it doesn't mean you're immune to the others.
A thoughtful gift might still bring a smile, but it's the act of, say, making your coffee in the morning that truly makes you feel seen and appreciated.
Makes sense.
So how does Chapman illustrate this whole love language mismatch thing?
He shares some incredibly relatable stories of couples struggling with this very thing.
Take Bill and Betty Jo, for example.
Bill thinks he's nailing this whole husband thing.
He works hard, provides for the family, even surprises Betty Jo with a new car.
Yet she's left feeling unseen and emotionally neglected.
Oh, I remember this one. Bill's all about those grand gestures of love.
But Betty Jo just wants him to actually be there, right?
It's like he's bought her a first-class ticket on a plane, but she'd rather be riding bikes with him.
Even if it's just to the corner store.
Exactly. Bill's showing love in a way that makes sense to him.
Probably his own love language.
But it's not what Betty Jo needs to feel appreciated.
Their story highlights this almost comical miscommunication that happens when our love languages are out of sync.
This is making me realize how easy it is to fall into the trap of thinking everyone experiences love the same way WE do.
It's like assuming your favorite pizza toppings will be everyone's favorite.
Talk about a recipe for disappointment.
It's a natural bias we all have.
But that's why understanding these 5 love languages is so powerful.
It gives us a framework for bridging that gap, for learning how to love our partners in a way that truly resonates with them.
Okay, I'm ready to decode these languages.
Let's break them down one by one, starting with words of affirmation.
What's that all about?
So words of affirmation, it's more than just saying, I love you, right?
Exactly. It's about expressing affection, appreciation, and encouragement through spoken words. Think heartfelt compliments that go beyond the superficial. Instead of cute outfit, it's that color looks amazing on you. It really highlights your eyes.
Okay, so it's about being specific, genuine, noticing the details. But what if your partner's idea of a compliment is, you loaded the dishwasher correctly? Some people aren't exactly overflowing with verbal affirmation.
That's where intentionality comes in. Chapman argues that love is a choice, not just a feeling. So even if it doesn't come naturally to you, putting in the effort to speak your partner's love language, even if it feels a bit awkward at first, can have a huge impact on the relationship.
So I might feel silly leaving my partner a Post-it note saying, "You're an amazing listener."
Yeah.
But if words of affirmation are their jam, it's worth it.
Precisely. Think of it like learning a new language. It takes practice and a willingness to make mistakes. But the more you speak it, the more fluent you become.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered words of affirmation. What about quality time? This one feels like a major love language for a lot of people, but it can also be easily misinterpreted, right?
Absolutely. Quality time isn't just about being in the same room. It's about being truly present. Phones down, eye contact, really listening to what your partner has to say without interrupting or offering unsolicited advice. Chapman calls this quality conversation, and it's a crucial aspect of this love language.
It's like that saying, don't just listen to respond, listen to understand. It's about making your partner feel heard, seen, and valued in those moments of connection.
Exactly. And it's not just about talking. Quality activities are just as important. Taking a walk together, trying a new restaurant, even working on a puzzle together. It's about creating those shared experiences that build memories and strengthen your bond.
This is making me think about those couples who've been together for decades and still make time for date nights, even if it's just once a month. They understand that carving out that dedicated time for each other is crucial for keeping the spark alive.
Absolutely. It's about prioritizing those moments of connection no matter how busy life gets. Now let's talk about receiving gifts, a love language that often gets misunderstood as being materialistic.
Yeah, it's not about showering your partner with expensive jewelry or the latest gadgets, right? It's more about the thought behind the gift, that tangible reminder that they were on your mind.
Exactly. It could be as simple as bringing them their favorite coffee in the morning, picking up a book they'd love, or even just a handwritten note expressing your appreciation. It's about those small gestures that say, "I was thinking of you."
I'm remembering the story of Jim and Janice. Janice is ready to walk out on the marriage, but then Jim starts speaking her language, receiving gifts, and it completely transforms their relationship.
It's a great example of how powerful it can be when we learn to speak our partner's love language, even if it's not our own.
It's like he cracked the code to her heart, and all it took was a little effort and a lot of thoughtfulness.
Precisely. Now moving on to acts of service, a love language that's all about expressing love through actions rather than words.
Actions speak louder than words. This love language takes that to a whole new level, doesn't it?
It does. For someone whose primary love language is acts of service, doing things for their partner is the ultimate expression of love and care.
So it's about going out of your way to make their life a little easier, taking care of tasks that, they dread, anticipating their needs before they even have to ask.
Exactly. And again, it's about understanding what your partner considers an act of service. It might not be what you find helpful or meaningful.
So for some people, it might be tackling that mountain of laundry, while for others it might be organizing their sock drawer or changing the oil in their car. It's about understanding their unique definition of helpful.
You've got it. And this is where observation and communication are key. Pay attention to the things your partner complains about, the tasks they put off, the little things that make their life easier.
Okay, that's a really helpful tip. And finally, let's talk about physical touch. This one can be a bit more nuanced, right? It's not just about physical intimacy, although that's certainly part of it.
Exactly. While sex is a significant aspect of this love language, it's really about any form of physical touch that communicates love, care, and connection.
So we're talking holding hands, cuddling on the couch, a back rub after a long day, even just a gentle touch on the arm during a conversation.
Precisely. It's about those non-sexual touches that convey warmth, affection, and reassurance.
For someone whose primary love language is physical touch, those small gestures can speak volumes. It's like they're hardwired to feel loved and connected through physical touch.
Exactly. And this can be particularly important during times of stress or uncertainty. A simple hug can be incredibly comforting and reassuring for someone who thrives on physical touch.
This is making me think about the story of Pete and Patty. They were on the verge of divorce, both feeling completely unloved and disconnected. It wasn't until they discovered that Pete's primary love language was physical touch that things started to shift.
It's a perfect example of how speaking the wrong love language can create distance and resentment in a relationship, even when both partners have good intentions.
Patsy thought she was showing love in all the right ways, cooking Pete's favorite meals, keeping the house spotless. But what he really craved was her physical affection, her touch.
And once she understood that and started making a conscious effort to speak his language, their relationship completely transformed.
It's amazing how such seemingly small gestures, a hug, a kiss, holding hands, can have a profound impact when they're spoken in the right love language.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the power of those small, everyday acts of love and how they can make all the difference in a relationship.
So we've covered the 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. But the big question is, how do we figure out our own WN love language? Because let's be real, we're probably not all walking around with a copy of Chapman's book tucked under our arm. It's like we need a secret decoder ring to figure out what makes us feel truly loved, right?
So how do we crack the code?
Chapman offers some great guidance on this. One approach is to pay attention to what makes you feel most appreciated in your relationships.
Okay.
What leaves you feeling warm and fuzzy inside?
Okay, so if a handwritten note from my partner means more to me than, say, a new gadget, that's a clue.
Exactly. It's about tuning into those moments when you feel most seen and understood by your partner.
Ask yourself, what was it about that interaction that made me feel so connected?
So we're talking about those small, everyday moments that really resonate with us on a deeper level. But what about the flip side? Can we learn something from the things that leave us feeling hurt or unimportant?
Absolutely. Often the things our partners do or don't do that hurt us most are directly related to our love language.
Okay, that's interesting.
So if my partner constantly forgets to call when they say they will, and it drives me absolutely crazy, that might be a sign that quality time is my jam.
It's a strong possibility. Our love language isn't just about what brings us joy. It's also about what makes us feel unseen or unappreciated when it's absent.
Those moments of hurt can be incredibly revealing.
Wow, that's a bit of a wake-up call. I'm starting to see how this works both ways. But understanding my OWN love language is only half the battle, right? How do I figure out what my partner needs without making them take a BuzzFeed quiz?
Pay attention to how they express love to you. We often instinctively speak our own love language, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
So, if my partner is always surprising me with small, thoughtful gifts, maybe receiving gifts is their thing, even if they haven't explicitly said so.
Exactly. Observe their actions, their words, their natural inclinations, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Sometimes the most straightforward approach is the most effective.
So instead of trying to be a mind reader, I could just have an open and honest conversation with my partner about this whole love language thing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It might feel a little awkward at first, but most partners appreciate the effort and vulnerability involved in trying to understand each other on a deeper level.
Okay, that makes sense. But this whole concept of love languages, it's not just about avoiding arguments or keeping the peace in a relationship, is it? Chapman seems to be saying it's connected to something much deeper.
You're right. Chapman argues that meeting each other's love languages fulfills a fundamental human need, the need for significance.
Okay, tell me more about that.
It's about feeling valued, important, worthwhile, both as individuals and within our relationships.
When our love tank is full, when we feel truly seen and appreciated for who we are, it gives us a sense of belonging and security.
So it's like those small acts of love, when spoken in the right language, become more than just gestures. They're actually building blocks for something much bigger.
Exactly. When our need for significance is met, it allows us to show up more confidently and authentically in all areas of our lives.
This reminds me of the story of David and Sharon. They were stuck in a rut, taking each other for granted after years of marriage. It wasn't until they started intentionally speaking each other's love languages that they rediscovered the spark that had been missing.
Their story is a great example of how love languages can breathe new life into a relationship, even one that feels stagnant or disconnected.
I love how David, whose love language is acts of service, starts doing those little chores that drive Sharon crazy. And Sharon, whose love language is words of affirmation, starts expressing her appreciation for David in a way that he truly hears. It's like they've learned to speak each other's emotional dialects, and it transforms their entire dynamic.
And that's what's so powerful about this concept. It's not just about romantic relationships either. We can use this knowledge to strengthen our connections with friends, family members, even colleagues.
That's a great point. It's about understanding what makes the people in our lives feel loved and appreciated.
Yeah.
And making a conscious effort to speak their language, even if it's different from our own.
Exactly. It's about bridging those gaps, strengthening those bonds, and creating a more loving and fulfilling experience for everyone involved.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. So as we wrap things up, what's the one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with today?
Love is a language we can all learn to speak. It takes effort, intentionality, and a willingness to step outside our comfort zones. But the rewards, deeper connections, stronger relationships, and a greater sense of love and belonging are well worth the effort.
Beautifully said. So to our listener out there, keep exploring those love languages. Keep those conversations flowing. And most importantly, keep choosing love. You got this.
Join us again next time here at the podcast, where we dive deep into the world of best-selling books. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for future podcast notification. This is the podcast, powered by OnCue New Media.